Hello and welcome to Taiwan Talks, bringing you the latest news from Taiwan. I'm Betty Chen.
I'm Rath Wang. Today we are looking at press freedom. Taiwan ranks 38 in the World Press Freedom Index, which is the top spot in Asia. China, on the other hand, is close to the bottom at 175.
Joining us to discuss this today is Yachi Chiang, Director of Ocean Sustainable Technology Governance Research Center at National Taiwan Ocean University. Professor Chiang is an IP law and cyber law expert, and Tobias Natterer, Creative Director Copy at DDB Berlin. Tobias was instrumental in founding the award-winning Uncensored Library with Reporters Without Borders. Good to see you back, Professor Chiang, and also a warm welcome to Tobias.
We also hear later from Steve Yates, former White House Deputy Assistant to the Vice President, and Ethan Tu, founder of Taiwan AI Labs and PTT, one of Taiwan's largest social media platforms. Now, press freedom rankings haven't changed too much, but there has been a huge drop by Hong Kong from 54 to a whopping 148. Professor, is this because of the national security law in Hong Kong?
Well, I think the introduction of the national security law in Hong Kong certainly plays a big part in Hong Kong's drop, but that's not the only indicator. We see that the independent news outlets, they have closed down one by one, and the foreign journalists, they were banished or prohibited from access to the information. So I would say the introduction of the national security law is only a snowflake that signals that winter is coming, or the winter is already here.
So, Tobias, a follow-up questions regarding Hong Kong. Apple Daily has taken a real hammering. Do you think that non-pro-Beijing or even politically balanced media can survive in Hong Kong?
This is it's a tough question because I mean the Chinese government has been trying to suppress independent journalism on a yearly basis and keeps going on. So I think it is within their interest to actually make this or eradicate independent journalism as much as they can. So I think there will in the future be more efforts to do so. And I mean we can see a lot how the government is taking a lot of efforts to try to hide their actions, to hide criticism. And on the other hand, I think it's important to point out that this is not simply a Chinese issue, because press freedom and the effects also expand to the rest of the world, and also in, let's say, European countries where we sometimes might ask ourselves, why does this concern us? We have to see how we are a global community, and we as a global society also have to fight for press freedom in other countries.
Speaking of news flows, Professor, there seems to be a move to self-censorship, especially with China's new laws, as you talk about the national security law.
Yeah.
Do you feel Hong Kong will one day self-censor to the point where we won't have any good insights or in terms of anything that we could believe out of media there?
Well, in terms of the political related content, I think probably we need to develop a set of skills to analyze and to interpret the content we get. Still, I believe there are many journalists that are willing to dedicate their time and life on excavating the truth and generating quality news to the world. But it is very challenging given the government controls almost all the channels of the information flow online and offline. So even you have the quality news, you have the truth, it will be very challenging for you to disseminate the information to the world. So I'm not very optimistic about your previous question, whether there will be, whether the more balanced media will have a chance to survive in Hong Kong. Because there's a saying goes like, all the media in China should carry the surname of the CCP. That means the party requests the absolute loyalty to the party.
So in other words, you're saying that you feel that media in Hong Kong will self-censor to the point where there won't be anything that is diverting from what the CCP wants to bring out?
Well, I think that depends on the content we are looking for. If it's not politically related, then maybe we can get information from the Hong Kong media. But if it's politically related, and I think we need to develop our skill to interpret the content we see. So, so what are politically related content and what are not? I think it is decided by the CCP.
So Professor just mentioned absolute loyalty to the CCP medium. I think for some Hong Kong journalists, maybe that's not what they prefer. So Toby, we know that some journalists from Hong Kong are already leaving there. Do you see that a situation there will turn into a rout?
I mean, we see this in many countries that, I mean, we just talked about self-censorship where this is actually, different, like important to see different forms of censorship, that it's not just a law or journalists go to prison, but self-censorship or journalists having to leave the country and therefore might not be able to do their job as they used to be anymore. So, I mean, there's like different efforts from these governments and regimes to, let's say, also make the work of journalists as hard as possible. So I do think that there will be a movement of more journalists probably leaving the country, but I think it is also important that other countries support then these journalists to the level that they might be able to still keep up their work. So, for example, Reporters Without Borders is offering stipendia and supporting journalists to then also, for example, come to Germany and keep doing their work from Europe. And then it is also important that we find good and innovative ways to bring this information back into these countries where they can operate from safety.
Professor, do you find Taiwan also a destination for Hong Kong journalists?
Yeah, I recall there's a news report in May 2022, and Taiwan has gained 63 more foreign correspondents and 29 additional news organizations.
From Hong Kong?
Yeah, that's said by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs official, and as media companies continue to relocate their staff from Hong Kong and China. So that's including Hong Kong.
So there is a huge trend for, and opportunities for Taiwan to become that space.
It's continuing trend.
Especially in the Chinese-speaking world.
Yeah.
So a follow-up question to you, Professor. If the journalists are coming to Taiwan, but we all know that the media environment in Taiwan is far from perfect, how can it improve?
Well, the modern media face challenges from many sides, like the government side and technology side and the market side. In an authoritarian country, government's control is the biggest problem. But in a democratic country like Taiwan, the market and the technology plays, they are the biggest challenges to the media right now. And people nowadays, they prefer to get free information online rather than paying for the quality news. So, but we need to remind ourselves that there's a saying, the free stuff usually will turn up to be the most expensive items. So the free information online does not cost us money, but it will cost us other precious things like our attention, our time. Then we may end up spending our time in using advertisement and spending more money on the products we don't need. What is worse, we may end up spending our time on poisonous disinformation and get brainwashed.
Okay, so we talk about the situation in Hong Kong and Taiwan, and now I would like to direct my question to Toby. You work in a creative industry, and what was it like working in Russia?
We did 2 projects for Reporters Without Borders, and Russia was part of both of these projects. I mean, we said earlier that it is important to help journalists who live in exile and bring this information back. So, for example, for the project The Uncensored Library, we've worked with a journalist. She lives in Paris because she had to flee the country from Russia because of persecution. And then we were pondering how can we help journalists to breach these firewalls, to breach censorship, and bring back independent information in these countries. And in this case, we wanted to reach young people because Reporters Without Borders told us they can convince, let's say, an older generation of the importance of press freedom, but it's a very complex topic and hard to understand for young people. So we were looking for a way to create an experience for young people that would teach them the importance of press freedom, and in not only in Russia but also in other countries. And therefore we choose Minecraft as a computer game to search as a loophole. And then we found out that Russia, although it's censoring a lot of information, still computer games are freely available. And amongst this, Minecraft was a very promising game where you can write books and publish information. And hence we found a loophole to bring back this independent journalism back to Russia.
In terms of Minecraft, you talked about young people being interested in games.
Yes.
When you talked about press freedom, what actually really resonated with them?
I have to say, a lot of these young people and gamers that accessed the library and came there, for them it was the first time that they heard about press freedom or that concept. It was not something that was present in their lives, and they also didn't knew about the importance, or let's say the dangers of it. So we really had to tackle at a very early stage, and it was not only about bringing, let's say, news to them, but also get this information to them that press freedom is something that they have to look out in the first place, not only in countries with censorship, but also in Western countries where they can, let's say, influence an election. So we had one situation, for example, and I think this is very interesting, that the library created an environment where young people from different countries met and could talk to each other. So we had, for example, a young boy from Canada who said, I don't understand why this is important for me. I have press freedom in my country, and I don't know why I should learn about this. And then there was a
based in Russia.
No, he was in Canada.
In Canada.
And then we had a boy from Hong Kong actually at the library, and he was explaining in the chat how it feels like if your freedom is about to be taken away from you, and why it is important to fight for press freedom, even if you're in a country where this might not be an issue yet, and the situation can change. And I thought it was beautiful that it was not only, let's say, an environment where they could learn something, but they could also learn something from each other.
So it's good that through the Uncensored Library, you created a world where young people can exchange and freely get to know each other. So I just wonder, how much control did the authorities have over this platform, or no control at all?
Authorities did not have control over this platform. I mean, we did a private server, and we also based it on a secure server. I mean, of course, we shut down the library to a point that not anyone could just publish information, or let's say do whatever they want. We all the information that is in the library was in close, let's say, discussion with Reporters Without Borders. We checked every article and everything, worked together with the journalists to really curate the content of the library. And then we had moderators on the server who were checking the chat and were, let's say, answering questions. But also if, let's say, some gamers would not behave in the way that the rules stated, that we could also, let's say, control what was happening on the server.
And they would get banned in that sense.
Exactly.
Let's now talk about another authoritarian. Professor, we often hear Xi Jinping called Emperor Xi because of his crave for total control.
Yeah.
What do you feel in terms of foreign correspondence in China? Because, of course, China's media is already controlled, and there are likely going to be more control in China's media.
Yeah, we see that the foreign journalists, they were denied of the visa applications. They were expelled from the country.
As with the New York Times.
And they were kicked out from China, or they were prohibited from access to the information. So especially I would like to use the example of the recent cancellation of the film premiere, the Winnie the Pooh, the Blood and Honey. It's an entertaining film, so why it's cancelled without offering any reasons? We could only be reminded about the connection between the Winnie the Pooh and the Emperor Xi, right? The connection which could be traced back to the 2013. People on the internet, they compared the photo of Xi Jinping working side by side with the former United States President Barack Obama to an image of the Winnie the Pooh and Tiger. And the meme took off on the internet and went viral. And people started to use the meme and to criticize Xi's policies or make fun of Xi. So apparently, China government does not find it very funny. So the censor machine started to work, and they started to delete any messages about the Winnie the Pooh. So we saw the cancellations also send out. The message is loud and clear. So I control what you can see and you cannot see. Because for me, how come a cartoon figure can do any harm to a country or to a society? It's lovely. It even helps to enhance the image that Xi wants to create, a benevolent ruler, right? But it's cancelled. We won't see, it's missed on the internet. So I think basically the absolute loyalty, total control
So this extends to foreign correspondence as well.
I think that's an indicator to foreign
Anyone
correspondence' future.
So do you think that China will become even more isolated and it'll be even more difficult to gain access to external information in the future in China?
I'm afraid so, and I think the situation may not be helpful even to China itself, because then it is prone to the dangers of making wrong decisions and making wrong judgment because of lacking of sufficient information.
Indeed. So moving on to TikTok, let's hear what former U.S. Deputy Assistant to Vice President Steve Yates has to say.
Steve, can you talk a bit about how TikTok is a threat to U.S. national security?
It's not just a threat to U.S. national security. I think it's a threat to the Taiwan public, the Japan public, and any other group that deigns to think for itself and has a way of life that is at odds with what the Chinese Communist model is. And basically, I see the Communist Party engaged in a cultural revolution 2.0, maybe short of traditional military conflict, using technology, economics, and any other means to exert pressure and influence. And basically, with that preamble, what TikTok represents is a vast data mining and profiling capability, but it's also married together with very advanced science-based psychological warfare and manipulation capabilities. This begins with hardware itself. It goes into social media generally, but if you have a device to which you are profoundly addicted because you get haptic or feelings that you can respond to when notifications come, and that these notifications disrupt your deeper thinking or any kind of consistent work patterns, that you seek refuge from normal life to have an escape in these social media platforms. It seems innocuous that you would have dancing or pet videos or cooking videos, what have you. But what also is happening without your consent and maybe even your knowledge is you are breaking normal patterns of interaction in your family, in your work, in your thinking. You're also getting manipulated. They learn more about how to make you agitated. There was an expose on Facebook that showed how their artificial intelligence was designed to try to sow division and anger because it would increase engagement on the platform. And once engaged, people could be manipulated to see more advertising and buy more things. That's one thing if it's for commercialism, but imagine if you're the Chinese Communist Party, you can use that same technology to sow division, doubt, dissent, disruption inside your enemy political systems and societies. So they could sow all of that inside Taiwan's democratic public or within America's democratic public. And so while they're dumbing down America or the free world generally, they're also using this algorithm to enhance their own younger generation's engagement with national pride or nationalism in China. The Communist Party of China is good, and focusing on prosperity, advancement, and how China is great and the United States is bad and other things like that. And so it's much, much more than just data security is national security. There's this deeper psychological weapon that is embedded in this. And if we are going to allow our publics to be subjected to that, they should make informed consent that that's what they're doing. And I just don't think anything with that level of intrusion into the human mind and our societal behavioral networks should be allowed if it has ties to the Communist Party of China, which is using these technologies to enhance control and human rights abuses and to weaken the free world.
Steve, there seems to be some criticism as to the ban that this would curtail freedom. How do you feel this can be balanced, as you mentioned the threat and how it poses a threat and false narrative to the free world?
I just don't believe this is an issue of free speech. Anyone is able to create these kinds of platforms. If we wanted to have free speech, are we going to allow the Communist Party of China to control all communications inside Taiwan? After 9/11, were we going to allow Al-Qaeda or other kind of extremists to have free reign on very, very addictive and intrusive technology platforms in our education systems and our societies? We're going to allow our government employees and organizations to have technology that has ties to these evil organizations that seek to do us very real harm? Of course not. And so just like you can't have free trade with unfree people, you can't engage in free speech on platforms that are controlled by these unfree entities. If you can have free speech inside China on their platforms, then maybe you could begin to have a conversation that banning this app or this technology coming out of China or tied to China is a problem. But for now, no one is able to have completely free speech inside China, free association or what have you. And it's them, they are the ones who have tried to create this bipolar reality of some sense of access to these things in their society under one set of rules, and then trying to do very different things with the same technology but different algorithm in the rest of the world. So that is, I think it's they that have chosen to make it so that there isn't a uniform platform, uniform algorithm, and therefore there is not uniform free speech. And that's why I think that it's completely legitimate to look at them as a target of exclusion and banning.
Steve believes that banning a controlled app from a controlled country isn't banning free speech. Professor, what are your thoughts on that?
We saw that the CEO of TikTok attended the Congress hearing last week in the United States, and I watched part of the video clips of the hearing on the internet. So actually the revolution was very unnerving. They said that TikTok, they were not spying on the journalists, but they did. So, and TikTok said that they were not sharing data with CCP, but they did. And TikTok said that they were not tracking the geolocations of the Americans users, but they did. And also we know that TikTok's parent company, ByteDance, the highest level of leadership, many people, they are either work or affiliated with the CCP. So we don't know the connection between the ByteDance and the TikTok. They work so closely. And a week ago, I saw a news, an article published in New York Times. It's written by Peter Harrell and Ting Wu. And Peter Harrell was the senior director of the National Security Council from 2021 to 2022. And Ting Wu was a special assistant to the White House from 2021 to 2023. And the title of the article goes, being a democratic country does not mean being a sucker. Let's say to ban a control app or controlled software from a controlled country, actually that's a tool we need for a democratic countries. So in my view, I would see that granting a control app the free passage to the information in a democratic country, you may be opening the gate to the authoritarian regime to get access in the democratic country. And they may have more opportunities to suppress the dissidents domestically.
So in other words, you support the ban?
Yeah, I think I support the ban, or I support the tools to maintain more cybersecurity standards. I think there should be a way to, for us to monitor their transparency or their cybersecurity standards. So a ban is an option. And to ask them to provide more transparency or to maintain the legal standards requirements, that's another option. And I would say I support we should take some measures.
So talking about personal data collection, such as the geolocations, etc. In Taiwan, there was a backlash during the pandemic when incoming passengers, their cell phone locations will be tracked. So what kind of concerns, or how can we strike a balance between the bans and the surveillance in the name of national security? Toby, any suggestions?
I think it's a very difficult question because it has pros and cons. On the one hand, I mean, surveillance, cameras, and if you're able to track people has a security aspect. And on the other hand, it can also be used to prosecute people, like, for example, journalists. And I think it highly depends on how we use these technologies, and if a government decides to, let's say, prosecute people, or we saw stories where police were obtaining protesters before they could make it to the protest because they already surveilled and had face recognition and knew
was this
they
in
were
a democracy or was this in an authoritarian country?
Both. Even in let's say European countries or in the US, like some of these things are already coming in. We had a situation in Germany where the police were running a test where they said like we are testing face recognition technology on a train station, and it was a huge controversy in the media if we should apply this technology because it makes it more secure, or if we should choose to not use it because it also gives, let's say, the danger of using it for...
What's the general response from the public to this kind of policy?
Very mixed. Actually, there was a high opposition towards this technology, and until today, I mean, the means are there, and we could use this technology on a large scale, but the population and also to a large scale authorities decide to not do it because there's a certain danger to it, and also tracking, for example, number plates in order to avoid speeding also has the danger to track people where they're going. And I think, in my opinion, it is right that for example, my country is not allowed because of that danger. And as when we see this used by regimes under the let's say excuse of security, but is actually then used to prosecute dissidents, I think this is something that this technology has a large danger of being used in that way. Yeah.
Toby, you talked about the danger of tracking and how this could be used as persecution. Given that TikTok has this function, as a professor just mentioned, do you feel that it should be banned outright?
Yeah, it's again a very difficult question. I think.
Say in Germany,
I mean,
would you want to see it banned in Germany?
I do not think that if there is a problem with any, let's say, platform, and TikTok can also be used to distribute news, for example, or any other social media, to immediately say if there's a problem that we should ban anything, because we should be able to have, let's say, channels for free speech where people can either like express their creativity, or also like on social media is especially in countries where like the normal news get controlled by the government, then social media often becomes a very important tool for journalists to, or let's say, independent information. So if we are very quick with banning these social media platforms, then we're also like we are killing another channel for freedom of speech, I think. But in this case, we should basically look at the laws that are in state. How can we control these social media, or let's say, how can we make the technology in a way that it becomes more secure? So I'd probably try to change the medium to a way where it is, let's say, can be used in a safe way before we immediately say we ban it.
So, Professor, in addition to an outright ban, do you think there are any alternatives for us to deal with the issue of TikTok or the Confucius Institutes?
Yeah, I think banning is only one option. And before we think about to ban it or not, I think the Congress hearing also want to know whether it keeps up to the standards that's set by the American law. See if they provide any measures to protect the user's privacy, and how they do their jobs in protecting people's information, or how they do their jobs in protecting this data and keep the data in the United States and not sharing the data with the CCP. So I think the main point here is we want to know whether it is up to the legal standard we want to maintain. So I think we are not talking about, since you are a software developed by Chinese engineers, so we want to ban it outright. It is because we are suspicious whether it's meeting our legal standards or not. So if it's not meeting our legal standards, why could we not choose banning outright as an option? Even it's not a Chinese software, even it's not a Chinese platform, it's a Taiwan platform. If it's not meeting the legal standards, we can also consider the option to ban it, right? And I think Taiwan is striking a nice balance in banning the public sector from downloading the apps. So individual users, they can still have the freedom to choose.
So, Professor, you don't think that Taiwan should follow what some U.S. lawmakers are suggesting, to have an outright ban and the public can't use it?
I think the U.S. is suggesting that, and they are now looking into the details of the TikTok operation in very detail. So I think that also shows the standards of a democratic country, the legal procedure.
There's discussion and legal procedure.
Yeah, there are discussions, there are procedures, and we see the transparent procedures going. So I think that's how the democratic procedure shows us.
So, Toby, in the previous part, you just gave us a brief introduction of your interesting innovative app or platform that is the Uncensored Library. Could you please tell us how was it able to break through so many countries with limited press freedom?
I think what the Uncensored Library was doing quite well is that it shows, let's say, a loophole that regimes did not expect. So they had the media, social media, and so on. They were quite good in censoring this, but they didn't think that a computer game that actually is a children's computer game could be used as a loophole and as a medium to make actually censored news available again. And I think this is also what then made the idea so successful, that it was unexpected. People, when people heard about it, they thought, okay, this is a very unexpected idea, and they talked about it, which then also spread the news. Yeah, I think that also was the beauty about it was that it had this, let's say, very approachable character for young people, because it was happening in their world. It was not another news outlet or let's say a complicated new way to approach it. They were playing Minecraft anyway. They were in this world, and we went to their world and built something that they could understand, that was very approachable for them. And this is then also what fascinated them to get in touch with a difficult and complicated topic like press freedom in the first place.
So a quick follow-up question. You just talked about the word loophole. What if the authorities, they found out, oh, there's a loophole and we can do something about it? What's your response?
Yes, we were thinking about this. What happens if the Uncensored Library gets censored?
Censored. Do you need to change the name, or what can you do, right?
Yeah, that would have been a problem. So what we did is... do
you have any technologies to protect the uncensored data, or how do you work around it?
I mean, the data of the library is censored, and it's on a European server. So even if China wanted to, I mean, they could not destroy it or get to the data. But I mean, technically, if they would find a way to censor it, we were thinking, okay, we need to find a way to secure it. So what we did is we created a download server, a download map, and this download map was saved on the blockchain. So it could not get destroyed, and it was decentralized, so you could also not shut it down very easily. And then what happens is that players can download the map, and I think more than 30,000 gamers downloaded the Uncensored Library as an offline map, and then they can upload it again and invite people. And we actually saw this works quite well. So we had, for example, some capacity problems where the server was overloaded, and suddenly gamers launched their own libraries all over the world, so to expand the capacity. So long story short, there's tens of thousands of libraries out there. So even if we or Reporters Without Borders decided we don't want this project anymore, we want to kill it, we could not.
It's still there.
Out there. It's impossible to censor the Uncensored Library at this point.
Fascinating indeed. Are there any other projects that you're looking at the moment?
We did a follow-up project, The Truth Wins, where we used Twitter, where we had the problem that we saw that social media accounts continuously get censored, and journalists open new accounts, and that it was hard for people to find these new addresses. So we were wondering if there's one address that is changing faster than censors could censor it, and if that address would still be known by the public at all times. And we thought that could be the lottery numbers, because they get chosen every week, and the regime, so even in China or in Russia, the winning lottery numbers are on national TV, and we use these numbers as a code to then on Twitter distribute independent information.
So, Professor, do you think that in Taiwan, maybe we can replicate a system, or like you're a university professor, how can you introduce this Uncensored Library to your students?
I think the case of the Uncensored Library is very fascinating, because it seems to me it replicates the model of the Paris to circumvent the censorship from the copyright holders. So it's kind of a way to circumvent the government's censorship and other censorship. And I would like to, I think now the students, they have access to the internet and they have access to many informations available on the internet. They have access to more advanced technology tools such as the ChatGPT, right?
Yes.
So they should actually, I think what we need to do is to promote the public education on the digital technology literacy, to tell them how to use the tools. Maybe it would be more important to teach them the information. We need to teach them how to get the information online using these tools.
Definitely. Moving on to Chinese disinformation campaigns, let's hear from what Taiwan AI Labs founder Ethan Tu has to say.
Do you feel that there is now a better approach amongst democracies, Japan, the US, and Taiwan, in battling disinformation from China and, say, also Russia?
I think there are a lot of discussing right now. So in the past week, we will just in a democracy country, we will just allow the big tech company, they can make their revenue in any way. But now we are talking about the code of ethics. When we talk about the code of ethics, which means that we need to be very careful about the information platform if there is a bias in the information platform. For example, if the content moderation in Taiwan is done in China, there is an issue because it will be biased. If the content moderation in Ukraine is done in Russia, for example, that's also a problem. So the bias of the technology, that also we talk about the transparency of the digital technology, for example, the artificial intelligence, how we can make the algorithm be transparent, so it will not be manipulated by the platform or by the third party, the campaign company, for example. And also, there are a lot of discussion about how we can measure the bias of the artificial intelligence to make sure the citizen in a democracy country will not get hurt because the bias of the artificial intelligence.
In terms of technologies or strategies that you've detected, which ones do you feel of Russia are similar to that China is using on its Taiwan campaign?
During the Russia-Ukraine war, the misinformation happened in the Twitter. The strategy, the topic, also repeat in Taiwan, which means we can find the same strategies, the similar misinformation disseminated in Taiwan in the Chinese language in Taiwan's social media like PTT. So, which means the similar strategy is actually using in Russia-Ukraine war. We can also find out is using in Taiwan as well. And the similar strategy for the reason, for example, he said the part of the Ukraine is actually partial of Russia, and that is a very long history. This kind of language, we can also find a similar language in Taiwan. That's being disseminated by the bot account we discovered on PTT and Facebook.
Ethan, do you feel that this is China learning from Russia, or do you feel that it just is a coincidence?
I think that China learned from Russia, but actually China is more sophisticated than disputing this information. And at the same time, I think from our observation, looks like the information is disputed in the similar strategy. Looks like during the Russia-Ukraine war, the troll account that controlled favor in China is actually helping Russia. So not only learn from each other, but also looks like the troll account, they are promoting each other. We are able to detect it. but we need to create awareness for the people to know this kind of strategy. Yeah.
Let's now talk about Chinese disinformation. Toby, there's been a lot of them, as we heard from Ethan too, about how China's attacking Taiwan on a daily basis. What do you think ordinary daily citizens can do as you work with students and others with the Uncensored Library?
Yeah, I believe that creativity has the power to fight censorship and also to work for press freedom. Basically, there's an arms race also of technology and of censorship. New technology arises, new ways of censorship arise, and I think creativity can keep finding new ways to evade this kind of censorship. And I believe that. Yeah, I came here to Taiwan to work students for the Cannes Young Lions competition in Taiwan, and I saw that there's brilliant young minds, very creative people here that are quick thinkers and very innovative in a way working with technology. And I believe that the next idea to evade censorship can very well come from Taiwan, and I would invite everyone here to think about this topic and also see it as their own responsibility to come up with ideas and fight not only censorship but also disinformation.
So when you talk about creativity, do you feel that it's something such as a new app to debunk and to use that so that you can lure more users to come in?
I mean, it can be, let's say, a big idea where that takes a long time to develop. Also, like creating an app or something that needs a lot of technological knowledge is, of course, hard to produce. You need time, sometimes budget. You need a team, and so on. But it can also be very small. For example, users. Someone came up with the idea when Russia was censoring a lot of, let's say, news and information when the war in Ukraine started. They said, but Google. Reviews are not censored yet. Why don't we give restaurant reviews and bring independent information into restaurant reviews? And suddenly all over Russia, the restaurant reviews were independent news. And this is something that everybody can just start with a phone right away. And I like the simplicity and the creativity of this idea. And I think everyone can come up with such an idea. We saw, especially from the Young Lions competition here in Taiwan, where we asked young people and students with no budget and a very limited time frame to come up with ideas that actually create some range, and that they did so with just a good idea to get people talking about it. And I think this creative innovation that you have in this country, this brilliant young minds, is quite a value that can also help with press freedom.
So definitely debunking fake news has become such an important topic. So Professor, as we all know that the presidential election will come next year, and usually around that time there will be a lot of fake news. So what can we do? How can we prepare ourselves, or how can we debunk the fake news?
Well, I think Taiwan has developed a set of strategies in countering the disinformation that includes the legislations and also the cooperation between the public and private sectors. And in terms of the public education, I think everyone should be, we actually can equip ourselves with more knowledge about fact-checking and also about the characteristics of the internet. I mean, internet is, the nature of the internet is so like the best soil for the disinformation. And also, as we mentioned about the technology tools, they can also help the users to generate the disinformation at very low cost and disseminate them through the social media channels. So I think the more we know about the nature of the internet, the nature of these social media platforms, the better we can equip ourselves to fight against the disinformation.
So definitely now a lot of let's say AI-generated platforms like ChatGPT or other platforms, they're just so popular. You can get the answers in a short instant. But maybe not all the answers are correct. So for the user, for the general public, how can we know that whether it is true or not? You talk about fact-checking, but how to really do that?
Actually, these days, I've been trying to use the ChatGPT. I throw questions to the ChatGPT system and see how the answers go. So I found actually the answers are mostly, you need to verify the
Exactly,
authenticity.
right?
Yeah. So only the people who know the answers, you will know whether the answers are right or wrong. So basically, I think actually that's still in a very early stage for the ChatGPT to answer all the questions you want to throw it, you want to feed it. But it will be very useful if you already have the background knowledge of the topic. Then it can help you to organize the data or organize the documents and quickly summarize the points you want. But in terms of the fact-checking and these technology tools, I think we need also think about some creative options like technology tools or to use the technology to combat the technology. Like in the case of Taiwan, Taiwan is the National Science and Technology Committee. They are proposing to develop a Taiwan's version of ChatGPT. So I think they can also embed the standards of the fact-checking into the ChatGPT. That could be an option apart from the legislations.
Apart from fact-checking, Toby, I wanted to ask you a bit about, we look at Ukraine and the ongoing conflict, and you work directly in Russia. How do you feel that experience can be applied to Taiwan, given that you've seen China work closely with Russia and they're parroting the same message here?
Yes, this is a big problem, especially when we are not talking about censorship, but fake news. So, for example, Russia often tries, or they're very good with spreading fake news, and also we're seeing Ukrainian news websites being copied to perfection, so that it looks very much like the actual news outlet, but the content is completely rewritten in a way that Russia wants to distribute their propaganda. And I think this danger of fake news also, of course, applies to, let's say, then social media, and it becomes even easier with the help of AIs to generate text and articles. And I think, yeah, it is difficult to control this. I think maybe if there's an article, there could be a warning sign, or let's say,
is that what Ukraine's doing?
Not to my knowledge right now. I mean, of course, there's let's say the Ukrainian Committee of Journalists are trying to fight this. I think that AI but also blockchain, that these technologies can also help to verify the truthworthiness of information. So, for example, for our last project, we developed technology where we were minting news articles directly onto the blockchain, so they could not be changed and also not be censored. And if you have a blockchain verification.
Let us know in the comment section if you believe Hong Kong media can still be saved. Also, if you like our shows, please subscribe to the Taiwan Talks YouTube channel at Taiwan Talks 2022.
Thank you for watching our show today. Stay safe and see you next time.